Hey folks, welcome back to the Coachful Coaching Leadership Podcast. I'm David Fung and I'm here today with Linda Walker. Linda, welcome.
Yeah. Thank you, David. Happy to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, so you're in Florida right now?
I am in Florida enjoying the sunshine.
All right. Well, a little bit of jealousy here for sure. So I think right before we started recording, you said you're going to play golf. You're an amazing golfer, right?
No, not an amazing golfer. I don't know any golfer that says they're amazing.
Okay. Well, I'm amazing. If the higher the number, the better, right?
Wrong.
Okay. See, there you go. There's my skill.
I hold my own. That's the most I'll say about my golf game.
All right. I can do a Happy Gilmore anytime in golf. So, hey, I want to get started in this podcast recording. And so if you don't mind just introducing yourself to the folks out there. And, you know, your LinkedIn profile says you're a professional communication coach. And I know, you know, working with you in the past, Linda, you have a lot of corporate experience. You've worked as a leader in, both developing leaders as well as leading people on the front line. So if you can just introduce yourself, what's your background?
Yeah, wow. There's a lot to cover, but I guess the professional coach, I'm certified through the International Coach Federation at a professional level. So that's where that comes from. As you say, I've had a lot of years of experience in the corporate setting, coaching my own team, developing other leaders. And one thing I discovered and figured out over the years that pretty well every leadership situation comes down to communication. And if we can all get a little bit better at communicating with individuals, with teams, with groups of people, and with ourselves, then we can have bigger impact, better impact.
Okay. Well, I think we're going to dive into some of those things around communication today. That's going to be a big theme of communication and leadership. All right. But I do want to, before we get into the professional side, I do want to get into some of the interesting questions I sent you pre-podcast. I was interested in some of the answers. So thank you for disclosing some of these things. Crazy but true facts about Linda. I've never actually met you in person. Okay.
Right.
And you say you're 5 feet tall. By the way, I'm 7'10", just in case you're ever wondering. Yeah, I know. Ex-NBA player.
I believe you.
I know. You should believe me. Absolutely. Authenticity is all part of my values. But you're 5 feet tall. I guess tell me more about some of the other crazy but true facts about Linda Walker.
Well, I think when I sent you my answers, one of the things I said was, I don't know if there's anything that crazy about me. Maybe I'm a little bit boring, but because I'm so small and I've always been tiny, when I was like about 5 years old, a wind picked me up and carried me down the road until I grabbed onto a telephone pole. And a neighbor came out and grabbed me from the pole and took me home. I don't know. I had to write that story when I was in high school. We had to write a story, and the rest of the class had to guess if it were true or not. And everyone guessed that was untrue, but it's in fact true.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you ever met me as a kid, I'd be that lamppost, literally. You know, that rock that would just hold you down. If you ever saw pictures of me, you'd understand.
Okay. So you are 7 feet tall then?
Yes. Yeah. 5,000 pounds, you know.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to ask you about is, when I asked you, is there anything you've changed your mind about lately or anything you've doubled down on? Can you talk about that? You talked about doubling down on partnering with people. Where's that coming from?
Yeah. So about 4 years ago, I left the corporate world, kind of a semi-retirement, but emphasis on semi because I wasn't ready to step away from doing the work I love, which is coaching leaders. And it was a dilemma for me because I don't like or enjoy business development. And so what I decided to do was partner with other entrepreneurs, other business people, and work as a subcontractor. So I doubled down on partnering with people that I really enjoy, that I respect, that I like working with. And it allows me to do all the things I like: partner with cool people, coach other leaders, and to be able to stay away from that business development side of it.
Hmm.
I am trading my time for money, which probably isn't the right approach if you're younger and trying to really build some wealth. But for me, it works out well.
Okay, partnering. Could we dive into that? It's and I want to dive into that because it's when at least when I look at leadership, like one of the core pillars, like obviously communication and effective communicator, but it's also closely related is someone who partners well with their business partners. Um, how's that? How's that served you in your career?
Wow, it's everything. Collaboration is what helps people succeed. I think a lot of people think that they have to know all the answers, and they're reluctant to reveal when they don't know something or can't figure something out. But when we collaborate with other people, we're able to really synergize different skill sets, different attributes, different experiences, and we can do anything. We have a collective mindset that enables us to achieve so much more than if we try to work independently.
Yeah, the knowing all the answers. I picked that up, and the reason why I picked that up is I recall us talking a couple of years ago about being being open to not knowing. Right? It's and I remember you coaching me on something around growth mindset versus fixed mindset, and on one hand, what I'm open to learning a lot of new things. On the other hand, when it came to myself, my identity, there was a fixed, is the word fixedness, right? Like, oh, I got to know all the answers. I can't show that I don't know. So I want to talk about that. Like when you think about and when you look at leaders in the corporate place that you coach, growth mindsets, fixed mindsets, what are you seeing out there right now?
Well, it's interesting that you picked up on that because I think that, well, we all get in our own way in a lot of different ways, but I think one of the most common things I see is people feeling like they should have all the answers, especially if they're leaders. And in fact, that gets more true as people get higher up. So even VPs, CEOs um, feel like they need to know everything. And they're reluctant to admit when they don't. Um, they're reluctant to show that vulnerability of not knowing. And as soon as we can open up that realization that it's okay not to know, then I don't know, more things become possible.
Why do you think, why do you think people are so reluctant? Especially the higher up you get up in the organizational chart. Why do you think folks there are so reluctant to admit that they don't know?
Uh, I mean, I think society, our upbringing, um, traditional, more hierarchical approaches to leadership is that when you're the boss, you need to know. You have the answers. You have to set the expectations. Well, that part is true, but you don't necessarily have to be the one with the answers. Leadership is not about knowing everything, it's about being able to take the best in everybody and navigate it together to figure out what the best course of action is.
Hmm.
I think people are reluctant to be vulnerable. Like I said, they're A very big trend that I see at every level, every day, is that now I'm coaching leaders from all different corporations, all different industries. One of the biggest trends I see is, and it comes in different formats, but related to imposter syndrome or self-doubt. When I talked earlier about communication, I did mention it's how you communicate to yourself too. And it's the things we say to ourselves. Like, we don't want to admit we don't know, or we don't want to admit to our mistakes because we're going to look fallible. We're worried people are going to think we're not capable if we're admitting to mistakes. So I think a lot of it gets down to that fear. We don't want to be judged as incapable.
All right, I'm going to dive into that rabbit hole. You
Oh,
opened it up
no.
right there. So, as a communication coach, I thought about your external communication, but you mentioned it's also about how you communicate with yourselves. And that has a link to imposter syndrome. That, in my opinion, I think there's always a healthy dose of it that we should all have to keep us humble. It's when it becomes paralyzing and we tell ourselves these stories. That's when it's not good. I guess question to you, like, what are you seeing in terms of what are people telling themselves? And what's causing all this imposter syndrome?
Um, we want to belong. We want to connect with other people. We want to feel like we matter, that we're bringing value to a workplace. If we're leaders, we want to feel like we're there for our people. No one wants to fail. No one wants to stumble. We want to be accepted. We don't want to be laughed at. It all gets down to fear, I think. And, you know, there's so much trend toward things like perfectionism, never saying no to anything because we want people to like us, to accept us, to respect us. Um, I think it all gets down to feeling accepted and worthy.
Hmm.
That's where I think it comes from.
What do you mean by that, feeling accepted? Like, if you're an executive at a Fortune 500 or a large nonprofit, on the outside, what do you mean you're not accepted? Right? You've reached the highest echelons of your profession. What does it
Well,
mean?
yeah, you mentioned fixed mindset. Yeah, we can achieve it, but then we want to hang on to it. So accepted can be accepted as a person, but it can also be people are going to accept and embrace my ideas. That I'm going to be able to retain this level that I've achieved. Um, the higher up you get, the harder you can fall. So
Hmm.
um, it's not always rational, but I think if you look at it in general, people fear losing something or not achieving something.
Hmm. Retaining. So when you say retaining, it's like, hey, I got to this position because I was doing X, right? And I want to hang on to that. Like, say, hey, I'm known for driving accountability in my business, and I'm known for that, and I'm going to hang on to that, without any consideration to the context, right? But
Well, that could be one of it. Or, yeah, I've done all this and I figured it all out, but now I'm facing bigger challenges or bigger needs. And what if I can't do it? Then I'm going to lose all this reputation I have from the other things I did.
so how do you coach an executive around that?
I think the two main strategies I use, and by the way, not everyone uses the terminology imposter syndrome,
Mm-hmm.
but it shows up as self doubt in other ways. The two main strategies I would use are number one, to normalize it. People are often shocked when I share with them that virtually every single leader that I've ever coached suffers in some way, shape, or form from self doubt. And so knowing that it's so common, I think makes people feel a lot better about the fact that they're sharing that same feeling. And then I think the second most important strategy I use, I really believe that whatever we focus on, we get more of it. So if we're focusing on our weaknesses or on our doubts or on our not knowing or all of those negative things, it's going to perpetuate. So I try to bring people over to what are your strengths? What are your great attributes? What kind of experience have you had that could help you with this? Where have your past successes been? Where have you been able to figure things out before when initially you didn't know? Um, Kind of like a big inventory of success to remind people that they've been able to figure it out before and they'll be able to figure it out again.
Sort of like a personal brag file. Like, hey, I've done this before. It's like your own little trophy case. Like, that's how I sort of think of it.
Yeah, I mean, it can be that, and it can also just be taking someone away from that feeling of being stuck right now to saying, okay, if we were to think about this in a future state where you've figured it all out, what's that going to be like? And as soon as the mind is taken away from that feeling of stuck, all of a sudden the frontal cortex kicks in and we become a lot more resourceful, resilient, creative in our problem solving.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the questions that was asked to me in coaching recently was, just going right to the end, like, what impact do you want to have? And, here's all this messiness that you're working through. Like, Dave, what's the impact you're trying to drive here? And then
Yeah.
when you understand the why behind it, you can work backwards to the how, is what I'm finding. But you're also talking about self doubt. Yeah. I mean, just this morning, I woke up at 4 something. It's nice out, so I wake up pretty early nowadays.
Wow.
But the first thing that came to mind was solving an issue at work. Right? It was a puzzle, and I actually doubted myself a few times while I went on a walk outside. Like, oh, maybe, oh no, no, this is the wrong thing. Oh, this is the wrong thing. Then I just came back to, what are you trying to achieve? So just this very morning, Linda, I had
Yeah.
self doubt and a few times, and I had to combat it myself. But I think that's also the power of coaching here, is that you learn the tools on how to talk to yourself, how do you communicate with yourself, which is what I found very beneficial here. So
Yeah.
I guess when you look at leaders that you've coached over the years, what are some other common limiting beliefs that you've seen?
Um, Perfectionism is a really common one. And you'd think that that wouldn't be a limiting belief, but when you think about it, perfect is impossible. So you're already setting yourself up to fail. So I think perfectionism, self doubt, um, the either unwillingness or reluctance to set boundaries, to say no, um, reluctance to jump into difficult conversations, give
Mm-hmm.
difficult feedback, accept or ask for difficult feedback. There's a
So,
lot.
so out of those, do you have a story around one of the toughest type of coaching situations you've been in?
You mean as the coach?
As the coach, you're trying to coach someone with one of these limiting beliefs. You have a story around a really difficult coaching situation?
I don't know. They all tend to work out pretty well.
You're perfect.
No, oh no, anything but. Um, I think that what starts off seeming impossible for some people is um, trying to figure out how to shift away from feeling stuck. right? Like, I just can't figure this out, or I just don't know what to do. And I think that I've been in many coaching conversations where people come into that conversation pretty much convinced that they're not going to figure it out. And so I love just helping people shift their perspective, and then all of a sudden they become unstuck. So an example might be, if you were to think of someone who is good at this, what might they do in this situation? And as soon as they start talking about that, it unlocks certain ideas. There's always a way to figure it out. That future place. Imagine a time where everything's sorted out and you've got the outcome that you really wanted. What might have been the first few steps to help you get there?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the really interesting questions where people go, I don't know. Well, what if you did know? All of a sudden they come up with a bunch of answers. It's interesting.
I stole that one from you from
Did
years
you?
ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember you asked me, well, what are you trying to achieve here? I really don't know. Well, if, really? Yeah, I don't know. And then you said, well, if you did know, what would you say? And that was so funny. But it's a way of objectifying things, right? And so, on the topic of like shifting away from feeling stuck, you gave some good questions to ask there.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I'd love for you to share like what other tips and tricks might you have for the leaders listening out there when it comes to, hey, I'm stuck on a problem, right? And I want to be able to ask myself some key questions to start unstucking myself. What are some of those questions a person or a leader could ask themselves?
It always has to start with crystal clarity of what you're trying to achieve. What's my goal here? Why does this matter to me? Who's going to be impacted when I achieve this? How are they going to be impacted? What's possible? What else is possible? If I were to look at this differently, what could I consider? If I had a magic wand, if you had a magic wand, what might you do that you hadn't done already? How will you know when you've achieved your goal? Who could you turn to for help here? What are your strengths? What do you bring to this situation that can help you unlock it? Where have you experienced a similar problem where you didn't know what to do and you figured it out? What did you do then? Mm-hmm. If you were to ask your greatest mentor what they would do, what might they say? I don't know. Those are just some that come to mind.
Those are a lot of good questions, right? And I think even just choosing one or two of those questions to ask yourself, like wave a magic wand. If you solve this problem, what would it look like?
Yeah.
Right. The miracle question, I think sometimes some folks call it. Well, thanks for sharing those tools, Linda. Can I turn a little bit more to you now in your professional career about the coaching you received? Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. I'm making you uncomfortable, right? What's in your career? What's the best feedback you've received and what did you do about it?
Okay, I'm going to go with the first thing that jumped into my mind because I think it was the most powerful for me. And it was the best outcome disguised as the worst feedback I ever got. And it was powerful for so many reasons. Okay, so it sounded like this. Really early in my career, I was still in my 20s. Worst boss I ever had. And the feedback sounded like this. The problem with you, Linda, is you have no empathy for other people. Okay, so there's so much to unpack there, but it was really tempting for me just to completely dismiss the feedback because I knew it wasn't true. I have a great deal of empathy for other people. And I almost just dismissed it. And it bugged me for days. And so finally I went back to this manager and said, okay, you gave me this feedback. It happens not to be true, but it occurs to me that you had a reason for saying this. So I would like examples. I want to know where this came from. What made you give me this feedback? And so then I got a list. Well, you interrupt people and you're always the first out there with your opinion. I don't know, there was 3 or 4 comments like that I knew to be true. I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, so those things are true. The conclusion you reached out of them was not true, but there's a risk other people are going to reach the same conclusion. So I think it would serve me well to think about modifying those behaviors. So I think it was the best feedback because it really made me think about how I show up to other people. And I know that we judge ourselves based on our intention, but other people judge us based on the behavior they see and they hear. And so it had a profound impact on how I showed up in the world in business. And fast forward to about 20 years later, I actually had the feedback. The problem with you, Linda, is you just have too much empathy.
Too much empathy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that one I disregarded. But
yeah, I've gotten the 2 extremes in the past, right? Where it's like, hey, you're too blunt, too direct, and by the way, valid, right? There was validity there, and I had to soften up. And then a few years later, someone asked me, someone told me, like, you were too gentle with that person. You weren't direct enough. Yeah. I'm like, I think a lot of people would disagree with you that I'm too gentle. I've been told that I leave no doubt. I'm direct but respectful, right? Or at least I try my best to be so. So I know that feeling when you're like, huh, okay, that's fun.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's talk about resilience. We've been through some crazy years, but also there's life experiences that we've all had that have tested our resilience, and it makes us who you are, who we are today, right? Can you talk about like something that's happened to you that has really tested your resilience?
Well, there's a lot of things, a lot of milestones in my life that tested that resilience. I guess the first one was getting kicked out of high school.
Is there a good story behind that one?
No, not really. I think I wrote something about a teacher and the principal kicked me out. I mean, I could have got back in, but so yeah, I started my adult life as a high school dropout. And I think it took a lot of resilience to navigate my way through figuring out how to support myself, and then eventually finding my way back to get a university education. I love reinventing myself. So each time I do that, it really tests my resilience.
Okay.
Yeah. Probably when I got divorced, I was angry. I was overweight. I was unhappy, single mom, 3 kids, busy job. And, I kind of rose out of those ashes as more fit, more healthy, and able to raise my 3 kids without support. Those test my resilience. I mean, I'm not a patient person, so there's daily examples of testing my resilience when I'm driving on the roads. A lot of idiots out there.
Where do you live again? I'll make sure I won't go there.
No. I'm a lot calmer now than I used to be. I guess the most recent test of my resilience was leaving the corporate world to do my own thing. I mean, I had spent how many decades in a corporate setting, and at 59 years old, becoming an entrepreneur. That's something. But everything's a learning experience, right? And so, one of my values is determination, and I will figure out my way through anything. I'm one of the most tenacious people I know. So that helps me be resilient.
Mm. So I do want to talk about that. So at 59, you left the corporate world after many years there, and you started your own business, struck out on your own, and your determination has helped you through. I guess
Yeah.
for the folks out there who are looking to start their own business, whatever it might be, a side hustle, what can you advise them?
Um, wow, what a question. I mean, I don't know. I think that my advice is going to sound so trite, but I'll say it anyway. What the heck? So one thing that comes to mind is trust yourself. Um, if your gut instinct is that you can do it, you probably can. Um, I think the other thing that just popped into my mind is do it your way. So when I initially started this, what the advice I got and kind of the direction I started going in is I have to have some big, elaborate business plan. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but through coaching, through a really good coach and one of those business partners I talked about, I came to realize that wasn't going to fit for me. I just needed to do what I love to do, and that's coach leaders. And if I can iterate my way through figuring that out, that'll work too. It doesn't have to be an elaborate business plan.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be some major, social media marketing thing. Like that just wasn't me. So, yeah, kind of knowing that there's different ways to go about things. Um, the other thing that's always served me well is why not try it? Life is short. You can always change your mind. Nothing's ever
Mm-hmm.
in stone.
Yeah, just try it.
Just try it. Why not? And actually that reminds me of a common coaching tool I use is to help people decide something is to think about what's the worst thing that can happen and are you okay with that? And what's the best thing that can happen?
Mm.
What if you succeed? What will that be like?
Yeah. Yeah. What's the worst thing that can happen? Usually it's not catastrophic.
Can you
And what's the
survive
best
it?
thing what's the best thing that can happen is usually it's actually within the realm of reality, actually. Um, but
Yeah.
just trying it, just do it. That is like you say it's trite. I don't think it's trite. It, like a lot of things in life, you just got to do it. You could sit in bed and lie in bed and just think about it all day, get it perfect. I've talked to folks that say maybe I need another certification, another degree. You okay? Those are actually the easy parts of life. When someone's serving something to you, when you actually have to serve something out to the public and to the society, that's when things are getting hard, right? And that's where a lot of doubts are. Like just starting this podcast, I just decided, you know what? I'm going to do it. I really enjoy learning from people. I enjoy coaching. Why not do it in a way that and by the way, I love talking to people, as you can tell, right? Let's just do it in this format. This is a great format, and at the same time share it with the world, right? If someone wants to listen to it, go right ahead, right? And I just do it. And one piece of advice I was given is don't make this work. Don't make this a business. Keep this a passion, right?
Love
That's
that.
number one. And number two is just honestly discipline. Like it's so easy and something that I'm doing too, just like what you're doing. Just say, I'll leave it to another week. Oh, we'll just leave it to another week. Oh, but and you just start rationalizing with yourself why you shouldn't do something. It's the discipline. I mean, in less than 2 months, I'm going to have like 10 recordings, right?
Wow.
And I just have that sort of energy, and I'm going to space it out and give it time to edit and everything. But it's just been fun for me to do something like this, right? And that's the thing. When I jump on something and I latch onto it, I just go. But a lot of times, like whether it's working out, losing weight, just do it. It's so trite, but it's trite for a reason. It's that simple, but it's not easy to start.
Yeah, and I love that you talk about the fun of it. Like if life isn't about experiencing joy, I don't know what it's there for. And I don't know how many people would be on their deathbed going, "Well, I wish I said no to more things, and I wish I didn't try anything, and I wish, I would have worked harder and slogged it." Like, you know, so what if things don't work out exactly as you expect, or if it doesn't work out at all? Like, I would still always feel better about myself having tried. And,
Yeah,
if I can have fun in the process and do what I love, wow. Like that's pretty cool.
yeah. I think there's an article I read a few years ago about the I think the nurses who are taking care of people in their end of life, and
Hmm.
and they recorded some of the top regrets or things that they wish they did, right? And some of the top regrets was, I wish I just didn't take this so seriously. I wish I just did that, whatever that was. And that was one of the commonalities. I wish I did that. Not I didn't do that. I wish I
Right.
did that. Right. And when it's morbid to think about death, right? But when you think about it, like if you look at countries like Bhutan as supposedly the happiest country in the world, one of the things they're not afraid to talk about is the concept of death, right? And basically getting you to work backwards. What's the impact? So if I died today, what is the impact I want to have? So it's just like coaching. And then when you work backwards, oh my God, the how is I just got to go do the things I want to do. And
Well, and
yeah,
I think you can think about death in a morbid way, or you can think about it as a way to think about how do you want to live life
mm-hmm,
while you have it. And
mm-hmm,
it is so short. It goes so fast. And I think when we're younger, we want to be perfect. We want to have it all figured out. We're in a rush to get to this position or that position or buy this house or have this kid but we're so busy trying to reach certain goals that we forget to enjoy the journey along the way. And I think
yeah,
that's where that saying, youth is wasted on the young. By the time you figure all that stuff out, it's like, oh, I wish I would have known this when I was 20. I wouldn't have taken life so seriously.
life so seriously. Um, Balance that with you got to still work hard in order to
Yeah.
achieve things, right? It doesn't just get handed to you. But yes, the societal expectations, parental expectations, peer expectations, like just all those things can come converging down on individuals, especially in your youth, though, right?
Yeah.
More so in your youth. But I had the realization the other day, and I said to a friend, I was like, dude, we're like almost like halfway done our lives. And he's like, I don't know, Dave, I'm going to live to 100 and something. I go, you live to 100 something? I'm not. I'm good with a fraction of that. So, but it's that realization where you're like, yeah, just do something that feels meaningful to you.
Yeah. I think having a sense of purpose or a mission, or at least looking for a sense of purpose in everything you do, is brings meaning to the things that we do.
So, on the topic of meaning, Linda,
Hmm.
you wrote something about what kind of shadow someone would want to cast on the world. What kind of shadow do you want to cast on the world?
Um, for me, I think my life has meaning if I'm inspiring people to be the best version of themselves. And In fact, that's part of my personal mission. That I wrote a personal mission statement when I was in my late 20s, and rewrote it again. I lost it, and I rewrote it another one like 20 years later. And then I found my first one, and they were almost identical. It was so weird.
Mm.
But yeah, it's about inspiring myself and other people to be the best version of ourselves through growing and learning and trying. And, at this stage in my life, I'm really proud that I've actually been able to do that many times over. I have 3 amazing kids that are their best version of themselves. So many leaders I've coached over the years who I've seen, achieve great things, and knowing I had even a small part in that is so rewarding. So yeah, I have done and will keep doing that through being a good role model, but also through mentoring and through coaching. And yeah, I want to keep doing that.
All right. Well, I can tell you personally that you've had impact on some of the things I've been doing over the last few years. So you're casting that shadow. You're having
Love
an
that.
impact. Yeah.
It must be late in the day because my shadow is longer than I am. You can have a
Yeah.
little squat shadow and then a really long one.
Yeah. Well, if you stand on top of a building 5 feet tall, it's like 50.
Yeah, exactly.
So given all your experiences, if you had to go back and advise the 20-year-old Linda, what would you say to her?
Um, I guess it'd be the standard pep talk. You've got this. But
Would she?
I always knew it that I could figure out anything I wanted to. So maybe just to confirm, yeah, you're right. You'll figure out anything. But I think I'm a pragmatic person, and apart from just supporting 20-year-old Linda and saying, "Yep, do it your way. You've got it," I would also say try really hard to slow down. Try to learn patience. Um, Take the time to ask more questions. Take the time to reflect and think before you jump into things.
Mm.
Drive slower.
how's
Swing the
how's
club
that going?
slower. Just life goes so super fast. Just
Yeah.
enjoy the journey.
Enjoy the journey. Patience. Slow down.
I don't know if I don't know if that would have been good advice for 20-year-old Linda, because patience is probably I have a real bias for action. I'm all about let's go, let's go, let's go.
Let's get it
I think
done.
the Nike slogan was written for me.
You wrote it, right? So, with that advice, how does that relate to advice you would give to leaders who are listening to this podcast?
Well, I think a chunk of words that I said in there was about take the time to ask questions. Leaders don't have to know the answer. Um, it's more about the questions you ask. The questions you ask yourself and the questions you ask other people. Take the time to do that. I have so many leaders that will say, I want to achieve this with my team. How can I do it? And one of the questions I always ask is, well, if you were to ask them, what would they say? So they, I want a team with a high level of trust. Well, why not throw it out to the team and say, wouldn't it be cool if we had a whole bunch of trust on this team? How are we going to create that? You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to know the answer. Get people inputting. I can't remember what you asked me, but that is advice I'd give to leaders.
Yep.
And the other piece, is that what you asked me? What
Yeah,
advice?
that was a question.
Yeah. The other thing I would do is say, cut yourself some slack. Oh my God. People are so much more patient with other people's mistakes or missteps, but they're so hard on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say, maybe ask yourself, if someone else came to me with this scenario, what advice would I give them? and do that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. One last question. What do you think the world will look like in 5 years?
Uh, yeah, I'm not good with these things. 5 years go so fast. I don't think it's going to look a whole lot different, to be honest. I do believe we're going to have better leadership. And I believe that because we're going to have to. We're in an era of quiet quitting. Workers today do not put up with that hierarchical, draconian approach to leadership. People are demanding to be connected to their sense of purpose. They want to enjoy their work. They want to feel valued. And I think that in the attempt to attract and keep good people, leaders are going to need to become coaches. Leaders are going to need to have that humanistic side by side approach to leadership. So I think we're going to have better leaders in 5 years. Not that there aren't already a lot of great
Yeah.
leaders out there, but we're going to have more of them.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's, and no fault of anyone's, right? There's a generation where it was suck it up, buttercup. It is what it
Do as I
is.
say.
Do as I say, not as I do. Right? We've seen those companies over the years. I guess that last question to you is I always end these podcasts giving the last question to my guest. So, do you have a question for me that I might have to edit out because I don't know the answer to?
Ah. Okay, here's my question for you. And I bet
Here we
you
go.
do know the answer, or
All
you
right,
can
here we
figure it
go.
out. What impact do you hope to have in the world with your podcasts?
Whew. So, so the why behind this is for me to learn, right? And it's a good way of publicly learning. This is a public forum for learning. But the hope of the impact of this is like what you're saying is I do hope the next generation, even the next generation behind me right now, are better communicators, are much more empathetic, are can anticipate their workers' needs much better, right? Can get ahead of potential issues, right? Like there's companies out there where like, I get it's tough when you're working in companies, right? In hierarchical bureaucratic organizations, but imagine the harmony you can achieve when people aren't fighting for unionization, people aren't fighting to go on strike, all those things that go on, right? There isn't this general dissatisfaction. Like I've seen leaks, to the press. I've seen a lot of that recently in my circle, things like that. What's the role of better empathetic communication, anticipating needs of people, better coaching, right? How can that help the next generation of leaders and prevent those things that we've all experienced at some point, right?
Yeah.
I think hopefully that's like what's the best that could happen. I think that's the best that could happen. Someone listens to this, listens to us, Linda, and picks up one or two things. It's like, oh, I should ask more questions of my team. Oh, number one. Number two, learn. Just learn for passion, not because you're trying to make money. Just do it for passion. Okay, that's number two, because I'm going to die one day, right? So if they just pick those two things up, I'd be really happy, right? Of course, leave your comments and subscribe if that has an impact on you. But apart from that, I'm not asking for much, right? There's people have asked me like, "Hey, Dave, why are you doing this podcast?" I'm like, it feels right.
Yeah.
There's no money coming from this. Good God, right? Like, so yeah, that's how I'm thinking about it. I don't know if I did you proud with that answer. That's my
Yes,
that's
you
my
did.
gut.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever anyone's being their authentic self and expressing themselves authentically, is powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is a work in progress, and what I love about it is just little tweaks I'm making to the show as I go. Right. Like, someone very close to me, my wife, said, "Man, that music that you have at the beginning of this podcast, it's got to go, Dave." I'm like, I don't have time for that yet. So recently, I made those changes, but just little tweaks I'm making here and there. It's actually fun, right? Because I'm learning all these other skills. Using design software and audio software and things I probably never touch in a million years, right? That's part of the learning that you see off camera that's happening at the same time. So it's
Yeah, and
fun.
it's hard to make hard to make time for any of the pieces that you don't love doing. Like for me, I had a website built for my business. Um, I haven't kept it up to date. It needs changing. I don't know if I'll get around to it. I didn't even add I have a communication program that I offer called Words to Lead By, and I didn't even add that to the website. Oh well.
It's interesting. I decided to, for myself, building a website. I decided to just build one day. It was like, and I didn't know how this podcast was going to help with it, and I just did it. Like, I come from a web design background many years ago, so
Well, you know how then.
it was actually, yeah, it was kind of, I was saying to some folks, I'm like, all my background doing this, it just came in here. I built it in about a week and a half, honestly, and it was actually, pretty fun to do it.
Hey, do you want to update mine?
Yeah, we'll talk about my fees. Speaking
Okay.
about passion, I do like to make money too at the same time. No, I'm
Yeah,
just joking.
speaking of a side hustle.
I'm just joking, Linda. Let's talk about that. Well, look, Linda, it's my honor to have you on the show today. You're someone I've respected over the years, and you've influenced me into where I am right now. So, thank you for making the time today.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. It's the first podcast I've been on. It was fun.
Well, hopefully it's not the last.
I listen to them all the time.
Yeah, reinvent yourself, Linda the podcaster.
As long as it doesn't take away from my golf time.
You could do it on the golf green. All right,
Yeah.
Linda.
Yeah.
All right, you have a good day, Linda.
Thank you so much, David. Good luck with it.